You know, I'm convinced it's some kind of conspiracy.
Conspiracy?
Mm-hmm.
That sounds a little far-fetched.
Oh, I don't know. Remember Lieutenant Orpheus? He disappeared into that Underworld series and never came back.
Sounds like my husband. He never came back either. Not after Flavors gave him a commercial break.
I am Polly Flavors. You know, I find it remarkable that his faith factory is being financed by an entire nation's indigestion.
Hello, listening people.
Hello.
Hello, Bartek. How are you doing?
Good. How are you, Ryan?
Oh, I'm emotionally disturbed.
I got electrically shocked.
Oh, I'm having a breakdown. I think I might need some treatment, Bartek. You're my partner. I trust you to handle all affairs.
That's good. Everyone needs to be in a pair.
Everyone needs to be in a pair. That's exactly it. Everyone is paired together in the end. So think about that. But we are a pair of podcasters. We both happen to be Polish, and we're spitting young gentlemen, hence the name of the podcast, Spit and Polish. And we are here to present to you a very spooky edition of Pictures Powwow, the podcasting series that we do, in which we have a discussion about a film that comes recommended, whether it be by us or you, the listening people. And since it's October, that means it's that spooky time of year. Ooh. And we have had our anniversary of when the podcast started.
Yeah, it's always somewhere around the October 20 section of the year.
It's, at least according to Facebook, it was October 18th, I do believe.
Oh, was
we
that
at least made a post about, like, our podcast exists, you can listen to it.
You know what? I think I do remember on the way to your place to record, I think I picked up a gift for my mum, and her birthday is October 18th. So
there you are.
Yeah, it might have been that day.
Might have been that day, but we've been at it for 9 years. 9 glorious years, and we've covered a variety of movies, and for October times, we like to try and dig our fingers into the mud, into the dirt, just find whatever creepy crawlies we can. And I just want to say, I think this year in particular, we've gone for a much more atmospheric, let's say, approach to the horrors. Like, we haven't done, like, in my mind, we haven't done, like, straight up just classic horror movies. Like, we haven't done, like, a Friday the 13th style. We haven't done, like, the Haunting style. You know what I mean? Where it's just like, this is like a classic, like, this is one of the genre type thing, or one of the spooky genre. I feel like we've done ones that are a little bit more off the beaten path. Even the menu.
Yeah, you know what? Ironically, we probably were more typical throughout the year because we did The Omen really early on, and Bodies kind of, I guess, fits more into that.
Even the menu, like, that's a bit of a different bend on things. But we are doing a musical again because it is the year of musicals. And Bartek, this was your recommendation. So how about you tell everyone about the film you recommended for us?
Sure. I have recommended us is it 1981?
Great question. I don't. It's an 80s. It's definitely the 80s.
I think I put an 81 in the last episode's description.
So,
the 1981 film that is from 1981, yes. Shock Treatment. It's a musical horror kind of musical dark spooky film kind of.
Yes. And how else would you go on to proceed to tell people about Shock Treatment? Because there's many who aren't familiar with this particular story, but maybe familiar with the thing that precedes it.
Yeah, well, this is related to the Rocky Horror Picture Show. One might say it's not a prequel or a sequel, but an equal.
Who are those people? It's not Richard O'Brien, I can tell you that.
I think he's literally the one who said it.
Oh, did he say that?
I think that was him.
Oh, boy, he said a lot of negative things about this movie, so I was shocked to hear a positive quote.
I think he did that thing where he changed his mind. Yep, so it is a film that was made after Rocky Horror Picture Show, which is, I guess, technically a sequel, but doesn't really follow from the last one that much.
It's a sequel in the fact that we do have characters from the previous film in this one, but they're in a different setting. different style, different kind of interpretations of these characters, even if they are the same actors who come back. Not all the actors come back. It is a follow-up, though. Like, they do make little loose references, little winks to the camera about how Rocky Horror existed, but they aren't really digging into it. It's its own thing.
Yeah, and there was a lot of trivia about how originally this was meant to be a direct sequel, and some of the songs, completely unchanged, had different context, where this was a song that Frankenfurter was supposed to sing.
So outside of just like, it does exist in this space of Rocky Horror, because Rocky Horror, the stage musical and the film, are legendary.
Mm-hmm.
They're often cited as some of the best of their given field. The musical on stage is still playing always, and same with the movie. The movie may not have been a financial or critical success when it came out, but it is a cult classic, and it still plays to this day pretty regularly around the world.
Among
among conclaves of 8. That's a Star Trek Picard reference for
we'll
you
go with
there.
that, because I think I was about to say cunt.
Around countries.
Among cult classics, I think this is one of the more beloved ones.
Especially for a musical.
Mm-hmm.
It's, the Rocky Horror Picture Show, the Rocky Horror Show, like all of it, it is very important. Shock treatment doesn't get talked about, and if it does, it's in very hushed tones, because most people tend not to like this. It does have fans, it does have people who defend it, but it is fair to say that shock treatment is nowhere near the level of cult status as Rocky Horror is overall. And this is only a film. There is no stage version of this. This purely exists to ride off the coattails of the previous film's success.
Mm-hmm.
And I have seen this now twice. This is my second time seeing the film. I saw it long ago, maybe when I was 12, 13. We had a copy of it, and my parents are like, good luck, give it a go. Because my parents are huge Rocky Horror fans, love it to bits, have been to screenings of it, still engage with it to this day. There's even a statue dedicated to Rocky Horror in New Zealand that has a live feed that you can look at. And all of this stuff, they engage with Rocky Horror, they like it, they love Tim Curry, they love, all of the players in it, all of the songs. I grew up with that movie. Shock Treatment, on the other hand, they're not fans of. My mum always recalls it's the first movie they went to see together in which my father fell asleep during. It's the first time that happened.
He was sedated, clearly.
Yeah, that's it. And my mum was very disappointed in it, and my dad obviously didn't like it. So we never watched it, but they're like, hey, you want to watch it? Good luck. And on paper, it should have everything I like. It's got the same director as the previous film. It's got some of the same actors and new actors who I adore. Rick Mayall, a young Rick Mayall before he launched off into success.
When I saw the cast list, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
These are people we like, and like you especially, champion.
Barry Humphries, who I am a big fan of. I saw him live. I got to take a picture with him. I got to talk to him for a few moments. I snubbed Jackie Weaver when I got to see him. It's a whole saga. I won't get into that. But until we cover Animal Kingdom, that's when I'll get into more of the Jackie Weaver story. I've already told it before, but I'll leave it for that. But I could not finish this movie. I know exactly when I gave up.
Mm-hmm.
I turned off the DVD and put it back in the case. It's whichever musical number it is that Janet has, that is her in the hallway with the red lights. Like, it's like the red room.
The one where she's like, I'm looking for trade or something?
Her. Yeah, it's after she's worn the dress, and she's, seductively
it's
part of the system.
It's
now.
like cutting between her and her husband, and he's like,
Brad.
Brad, I'm looking for love, I'm looking for trade.
Yeah. Sure. I just remember that being the visual thing that I switched off at. I had a miserable time watching this film when I saw it all those years ago. I just remember this, and this is well, I'll pass it over to you so you can explain your histories and opinions and thoughts and whatever. But I just remember this being the one overriding thing. Annoying.
Mm-hmm.
All of it. I remembered being annoying from the visuals, from the numbers, like the songs, the dancing, the performances, just the volume. I just remembered it was loud and annoying and shrill. And that's all I had. There was no subtlety. There was no change of tempo. There was no like, oh, now we're slowing down. Now we're speeding up. Now we're hitting a spooky like now we're hitting a funny. All of it was on the same exact level for me of just annoying.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember particularly the number of Janet's dad singing. I remember feeling embarrassed. I was like, oh, this is embarrassing. Like him with the lawnmower. And I just remember that song standing out as a particularly embarrassing one. I was like, why am I watching this? I'm so secondhand embarrassment. I'm like, I was like, oh my God, I feel so sorry for everyone involved in this movie. So I haven't watched it since then. And if you heard all of that and you heard my reaction last week, I wasn't really coming into this joyous, but I did try to give this a fair shake. And so I'll leave it there. Bartek, you're the one who recommended this. So tell us your experiences with this, why you recommended this, your feelings of the Rocky Horror shock treatment oeuvre.
So I'd never seen shock treatment before. This was my first time seeing it. I didn't see the Rocky Horror Picture Show until like very early adulthood, I want to say. I remember I was hanging out with some friends and we were at, I think it was like a Maya Megamart or something. It's a store here. And I saw that there was a 2-pack of like, oh, Rocky Horror Picture Show and shock treatment. And I was like, oh, I've always been meaning to check out Rocky Horror Picture Show. Because I remember in year 7, the school production that was being done at the school that I was going to had a bunch of like musical sequences where it's like, oh, they'll just play a bunch of different songs, and you know the year 7s will do all the choreography, and you know between all that the older students will be actually like acting out a story. And I remember one of the sequences in it had the Time Warp song, which is from Rocky Horror Picture Show. And it was always a song that stuck out to me back when I was 13. So I always wanted to check out like, oh, I want to see that film that it's from. I didn't necessarily walk into it knowing like its cult status or, you know, how beloved it was. But eventually I got the film, and I remember I was watching it with my younger brother. We both really enjoyed it and was like, oh, yeah, that was fun. And that's the only time that I've seen the Rocky Horror Picture Show, you know, all the way through with attention. Like the only other time I've had it play around me is like at a party where, you know, I'm like half paying attention to it. So my attachment to it isn't, you know, that as strong as most people who champion the film. I just remember really liking the film, and knowing the sort of reputation of shock treatment. It's like, okay, apparently it's not as good, but it's still a musical. I want to check it out someday. And I remember even on this podcast, like I've mentioned it a couple of times and you've always given like a negative reaction. It's like, okay, I know that when I eventually recommend it, you know, it's not something Ryan will look forward to, but and I said it last episode, like, okay, well, we're in spooky month of the year of the musicals and I'm picking an American pick, so may as well get it out of the way when the themes are all aligned.
Is it an American pick? I guess it is. It is Fox. I just associate it also being so British, mainly Rocky Horror. Well, the question is on everyone's lips. Why shock treatment as the recommendation and not Rocky Horror, considering you have a very, like, loose relationship with both of these?
Because I wanted to see it.
That's it? That's all? You just wanted to see it? You haven't seen this before? You knew of its reputation,
I haven't seen it before. I think I've seen a video review of it a couple of years ago, and I didn't really remember too much from it other than, like, oh, there's some sort of TV show. It's a lot set in a studio, and there were 1 or 2 songs that I remembered.
We had to make the gamble that it would line up with Spooky Month, considering Rocky Horror. Like, it all banks on Rocky to assume that this is for Spooky Month, because I was watching this last night and I was like, I don't know. Is this a movie you would put in Spooky Month if it didn't have the Rocky Horror connection? Like, if you didn't have in your mind the existence of the film that came before it, which definitely lives in the October feel, I don't know if you'd be putting this one here. Like, I'm not blaming you. I'm just saying, like,
I hadn't even thought about that until just now. Yeah,
because it's like the thing Richard O'Brien points to is like decades later, the Truman Show came out, and he's like, "Oh, they ripped me off. Oh God, they got it this way." You wouldn't put Truman Show in October, even though it's more horrific than Shock Treatment.
I mean,
honestly,
I guess this film has a bit of like a gaslighty dystopian thing going on,
and Shock Treatment itself is a very horrific. I'm not denying. I'm just saying, like, it is. It's such a specific type of movie.
If I'd only ever seen this film, I didn't know that, Rocky Horror existed, and I would be thinking of, spooky month pick. Maybe this would be much lower on my, like criteria of like, yeah, that's a spooky month pick.
No, that's fair. Now,
I never thought about that.
It is difficult not to compare and contrast. Even if you are someone like yourself that has a very, again, very minor connection to Rocky Horror. Rocky Horror is, it's seminal. It's made impacts. We've covered Tim Curry movies in the past, and it's like, well, that's one of Tim Curry's iconic roles. Like if you think of Tim Curry, Frankenfurter pops up. It's like one of the first things that pops up.
Yeah, it would be.
That and Nigel Thornberry, of course. And oh, smashing.
What about Oscar?
I know. Well, that's for us. Yeah. Not Legend. That's another one that would actually pop up.
Oh yes,
it's The Darkness.
Yep.
It has sexy bighorn devil guy. But what did you think of Shock Treatment? Since you hadn't seen this, and yeah, you knew that it may be rough experience because of my reaction, but also just generally the fact that no one really speaks about Shock Treatment.
Yeah. I was walking in just hoping to be pleasantly surprised. I'm kind of in the middle on it. I did like it. It is a bit rough in some regards, and I did enjoy the songs quite a bit. I think a lot of the songs were very catchy. But yeah, just seeing how everything ties together, it felt like the attention was kind of all over the place. Maybe the pacing was a bit too quick with some of it. Yeah, and I was thinking back to when we did Phantom of the Paradise, because the lead actress in this was the girl in that. And we were complaining about like how there wasn't enough of her in Phantom of the Paradise. She felt kind of like an afterthought, whereas in this one, it felt like she as Janet was like so much in the attention that Brad was kind of the afterthought.
There's an argument to be made that that's kind of the point, though, right? That Brad is being forgotten about, and she's saying she's doing this for him, but she's actually doing it for all these other reasons, and she's being seduced to the industry and the guy who runs all of this and Brad's relationship. Oh, there's more to it than you may think. Yeah. The same actor plays both roles. Why is that? Oh, you'll find out.
Yeah. And I did walk in knowing that, it would be satirical in some nature, so I was really interested to see how that would go.
Yes, that is true. There is a unique quality to this film, which is its satirical nature. It was during a time in which the television that it's making fun of didn't really exist. It was ahead of the curve. It really did look at things that we would see come to pass in a major way decades later. And other films that do get heralded for this, like your Truman Shows or even Gremlins 2, still come out way after this. There's other things that exist, obviously, that kind of touches upon these things. There's great sci-fi stories that do, but for what Shock Treatment has in its favor is, it really did have its finger on the pulse of something that did not even have a heart to beat yet. And so it is kind of wonderful to look back on Shock Treatment and see it lampooning and satirizing and critiquing the culture of the time, whilst also being able to look forward and see what would the culture of humanity be in regards to entertainment and how we dehumanize people without actually having that big... Because if this came out today, we wouldn't really... Like, you would talk about this, of course, like, all thematically, but there wouldn't be, like, this, this heft to it, because this is the reality we live in, and we see like a billion of these type of Black Mirror.
Yeah, it would feel a little bit old hat.
Yes, it would feel very familiar. Like there's that show. like there's that show Dead Set that I always bring up, which I do believe is by the same guy who did Black Mirror, where it was, what happens if a zombie outbreak happened, but we're following the people in the Big Brother house?
Oh, yes, you did bring that
and
up
that's like a
once.
funny idea of like, they don't know because they're in the Big Brother house, and they're stuck there. And that's a cool idea, while the producers and everyone outside knows. But to give, some warm-up praise to Shock Treatment, I definitely liked the comedic and satirical and interpersonal aspects. Like one of the early numbers about Denton and Dentonvale and all that was like some line about like how they're very into like other cultures and all of that, and it's very creepy the way that they do it and say it, and this rictus fake smile, and then we cut to the cop and he's just like, that's right, we're totally cool and progressive and neat and happy and everyone's great, and you're like, I don't buy it.
Yeah, throughout the entire film you really feel that artifice. Like it's kind of I don't even know if the film's going for it or not, but there's all these different locations. Like there's a hospital, there's the a TV studio, there's the places where they sleep, which I think those are also in the hospital, but it all feels like it's all in the same building.
It's all in the same set.
Yeah, like even the house that they live in, and you really feel the sense that like, oh, these aren't real places, this is just all for show.
That's right. It's a film that is very claustrophobic because it's taking place inside of this TV studio.
You don't have any outdoor shots.
Yes, exactly. And there's a big meaning to, again, people, if you've not watched Shock Treatment, give it a watch for yourself. The end in which they fix the car and drive out, and we don't even see them out. We just see them leave the door and doorway, and then they're gone. It still is keeping us in there. Still keeping us in the studio. We're not allowed to leave. And I think that says something too. On a technical level, I think the filmmaking is quite impressive. There's a lot of intricate camera work. There's long one-shot takes. There's the utilization of these are obviously sets, so let's play with that. Lots of whip pans and great kind of transitionary shots where we're like in one place and then something obscures the camera, now in another place. The choreography for a lot of the dancing is quite neat. I think sometimes it does have that annoying flair where it's like, okay, I get it. Got a lot of shit happening on the screen where I can't absorb the choreography, like it's too much, but that's a part of the movie, is the excess. But it's like people who hate Wolf of Wall Street for being too excessive. It's like, well, yeah, but that's kind of the point. But that's the thing. How much is too much for you, the individual viewer, will vary.
Yeah, I understand that. It's like when you have there's one song where they use the crowd a lot.
Yes.
And it was like, the thirds of the crowd get up and sing. And it's like, there are a lot of people there, but it's very, tightly blocked, so it doesn't feel that excessive.
And it stands out because Brad is the only one not singing along and not doing the choreography and being pulled and pushed, and he stands out, but the camera isn't drawing attention that he's just one of the many faces in this big crowd. But you notice because there's someone not doing the choreography out of people who are doing this clockwork precision choreography. You can't help but draw your eye to like the fifth row to the left. There's someone not doing it. Mm-hmm. Hence, Brad, even though he's very much absent from this movie, he stands out every time we see him because he does not bow down to the tone of the film itself, and he doesn't bow down to the eccentricities of the world. So those are some of the things that I praise of the movie. I hated this film. I loathed it. I was miserable. I did not like a single musical number, like song. Mm-hmm. They all felt the same to me. And they felt like they very much lacked on being a musical. Like, I don't really feel like when you put all of it together, that the songs really progressed a narrative or themes or really gave me too much in the way of character. You could point to these songs and say, well, Ryan, here's how the lyrics, but like as a whole, I didn't really feel like if you swap some of these numbers around, anything would change. Like, what does the dad song give you as like a part of a musical narrative? But it's trying to have its cake and eat it too by being like, no, it is a musical. I don't know. It's this tough thing where you can have some musicals where the songs don't do that, but we still have a narrative, like Phantom of the Paradise, where not every song was the typical musical narrative where it pushes you, but at the same time, many of those songs told us who the characters singing them were and what they wanted and who they wanted to be and what they were struggling against.
Yeah, I think you're touching upon the part that, was like niggling at me while watching the film, like it all coming together. It did very much feel like each song should have been like listened to in isolation almost. Like I walk out of the film being like, I actually enjoyed all those songs, but yeah, in terms of what they all meant to each other, it kind of all felt a bit slapdash.
That's one of the big complaints people have about musicals, for instance. I'm a fan of musicals. You're a fan of musicals.
Mm-hmm.
But there are people who really can't get on board with them
Yeah.
because of various reasons. But one of them is if you're trying to tell a narrative, it can be very annoying when we're going to stop now to do a song. People can't really get on board with that. And there are others who can't, say, for instance, when we cover something like Tommy, where it's all told through song. There are others who like musicals or don't that really can't handle those types. That's understandable. And I think this falls into the first category where it's like whatever loose semblance of character and plot we have is going to be hard cut into by a random song that doesn't really feel like it's flowing off of that scene or moving us forward. Like, there's just so many times where that happens. Like, for instance, I'll bring up one that really bothered me for some reason, which was the Good Night song where they're in their beds in the hospital. Could you tell me why Barry Humphries doesn't get to sing in that? Why is he there then? Because they do this deliberate camera move where they go boom, 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 and there's a rhythm to it, but then they skip the rhythm because Barry Humphries isn't singing in that number.
Yeah, he's being still on his knees in a bed, like, while they're moving to the next room.
But there's a specific rhythm and cadence to how it's shot, to the numbers, but the windows, I think it's like maybe odd numbered amount of them, or maybe it is even, but we skip him each time because he's not needed in that number. There's no reason to have him there. There's just, in the next scene, he'll come out of the bedroom and look for Janet. Like, that's the only reason you have to have him there. But for the musical number, they're each one supposedly telling us something about these characters. But visually, you're showing us one character, and they're not being allowed, they're not going to sing, and it doesn't feel like their absence of them singing is telling me anything about their character. It constantly was me going, oh, are they going to get to him? They're going to get to him? Oh, okay, they're not. I was thinking about, they're not doing, okay.
Yeah, I think they were trying to go for, like, a gag where it's like, oh, look, this guy's not engaging with the song. He's just, awkwardly sitting on his bed, kind of like the guy in The Guest. But then, you're thinking back on that after you finish the film, like, his whole persona is kind of like a character being put on, hence, the whole artifice of TV. So it's like, oh, well, shouldn't he be, like, honest with who he is in that moment?
Yeah, exactly, because he's always playing a character, but there are moments where we see the real version of that person, such as he's not blind. He's faking being blind. We majorly get that revealed in the following scene where he goes to see Janet in the shower and, like, he takes off his glasses and he's clearly not blind.
Yeah, for most of the film, he's playing this kind of, like, Doctor Strange-lovey character.
Oh, yeah. And when we first meet him, we meet him from behind. We don't see his face, and the makeup artists are putting on his face, and he puts on his glasses, and then he whips out his cane, and it's, and off we go. And you're like, oh, it's a blind guy. Oh, that's surprising. Let's go see how he operates. And then there's little tidbits throughout the journey where, oh, he's probably not blind, and he's probably, something darker. And when we have this musical number, it's him on his own. He's in the bed on his own in his room. So why is he still pretending to be blind?
Exactly, yeah.
Exactly. Or is this him like, my character's not on, so I've shut down? But it doesn't work with when we see him not in character every other time in the movie. So I can't. This is such a weirdly minute specific example, but it is something I keep coming to of like why the songs fail me as a musical. As individual songs, I still didn't like them. They're not to my taste.
No, fair enough, yeah.
I couldn't be bothered with. They all just sound the same to me too. They sound too similar, too like 50s rockabilly style. Like I couldn't tell you like what, like if you get the Rocky Horror score and soundtrack, the songs sound different to one another while still also feeling in the same vein as one another. Like Sweet Transvestite is very different to Eddie's Teddy, and stuff like that. So that's just my thoughts on it. But how did you feel overall about this movie? You're in the middle of the road, but tell us more about your experiences. Because I'm quite harsh. I'm like, I hate this. I didn't enjoy anything. I labeled some stuff I liked because I try to find something.
No, I think that's totally fair. Yeah, this is one where I'm just thinking like, yeah, the sum of its parts just didn't quite, it wasn't quite bigger than the sum of its parts. Like you brought it up at the very beginning, like there are all these great actors in it. And I found that a lot of the performances were great. I enjoyed the songs. I enjoyed the ideas of the film, but it all just coming together and it felt, a little bit messy. And again, it felt like Brad was very much an afterthought, which is, part of the story. And there is a reveal at the end that justifies that further. But it really does stand out where, like, every time you see him, he is just so still and, not being used.
Yeah. What else contributes to that messiness for you, especially considering there's a lot of the parts you do enjoy? Like, why is it that those parts don't come together, or what else is it about the movie that is making it just fall that bit short?
Yeah, well, maybe when looking at the general events of the film, they do kind of follow a similar pattern where the story of the film, for anyone that doesn't know, is that...
Yes, please tell me.
To my knowledge, they're separating Brad and Janet. Brad, they're casting him out of the spotlight, and they want to build up Janet as this new, like, idol for everyone to glamour at, and she's going to be the next big thing. And so we're going to, now this scene, we're going to give her a new dress that will really say something about her in an artificial way. She's going to sing this song, which will further her, like, sort of idol-y career. And most of the progression of the film is just like, okay, what are we going to do about Janet next? And then you'll have some scenes or moments of the conspiratorial characters like discussing what they're going to do next. Then you'll cut to the two people who are on Brad and Janet's side, further investigating and just...
Who are those people?
They had a TV show right at the beginning.
Oh, the judge and
the lady who's friends with Janet and
Hapshat.
They get fired, and they have all these lines at the beginning of like, oh, they're the perfect couple, and then you cut to the big media show. It's like, oh no, this couple is bad. You need to go to a psychiatric ward, and they're investigating throughout the film, and you have a lot of these repetitive scenes where it's all of the characters with their main motivation, you're doing a little bit more with them, and it doesn't feel like there's really that much of a difference until near the end where, you give it a resolution to everything.
A revelation and resolution.
Revelation and resolution.
It's a film that clearly has things it wants to do and things it wants to say, but it doesn't end up saying anything or doing anything, in my opinion. You can list the story, beats of it, and the characters and what they go through and their stuff, but and what the film's saying, but I honestly just don't feel any of it. And not only do I not feel it, but I'm not thinking about any of it either.
Yeah.
The plot is so meandering and nothing, and it doesn't get to have the benefit of the previous endeavor with Rocky Horror, where Rocky Horror follows a lot of very overt and obvious and literally pointed to horror/sci-fi tropes, where it has a framework where the beats of the story. Like, Brad and Janet are a young, innocent couple who find themselves lost because of their flat tire, and they go to the creepy old mansion in the wilderness for help, and there's a mad scientist. That story.
Yeah,
you don't need much.
Simple skeleton of a story and then expand on that.
But this doesn't have that.
Yeah.
Because this is a different, weird, unique, bizarre story, but it's not interested in telling it, so it doesn't get to have the benefit of getting to play loosey-goosey with it like Rocky Horror, because Rocky Horror is playing on cliches and tropes. This is trying to stroke his chin, and then Richard O'Brien would be like, oh yes, you see, I was telling a story about something that didn't happen until decades later, and Truman Show ripped me off, or I feel blah, blah, blah. You can't get to do that card at me if your film and your story didn't actually get into that.
Yeah, I recognize that what I was saying before, summarizing the experience of the film, basically amounted to the film begins, then the characters do things, and then the film ends. But that kind of is the depth that I got out of the film, like what you were just saying then.
There's a film that I kept thinking of in comparison to this, and it's one that you didn't care for as much, but I kept thinking of True Stories, the David Byrne film.
I did think of that quite a bit, yeah.
In which we're following an assortment of characters in a community. It's a musical that is basically like the True Stories is an album that the Talking Heads made, and they made it with this movie in mind. And it's just a story about like rural America and the urbanization of it and the modernization of it and consumerism. And, it gets around the point, and you have all of the story's very loose, and the music, numbers, the songs are also very loose. I think that just had more to say and had more heart. While this film, I don't know, did you find it annoying? Was that too much of a mean thing to say? Because I still found it annoying. Like everything was up to 11 to an annoying degree.
It didn't annoy me. I guess I can understand if it annoyed you, but for me, like, I guess the musical numbers were just the things that were, I was leaning more towards. Like, okay, well, at least I'm enjoying this.
What about the characters? What did you think of them? Was there any in particular that you gravitated towards, and why?
I generally liked the characters. All of the villain crew, they all had, weird looks to them, like Richard O'Brien as like the bold doctor guy with the glasses and his way of speaking. A couple of the other ones who I think were returning actors from Rocky Horror. Mm-hmm. They were also fun. The Barry Humphries one, like, as much as we've talked about how they were kind of going all over the place with him, for the most part, I was enjoying him.
Yeah, I'm glad. I wanted to love them. I want to love them. Like, I love these actors. I don't mind the aesthetic of it. But I just could... the best way to sum it up is Rick Mayall's in the movie and he's not allowed to be funny. And that's how I feel. Barry Humphries is in the movie and he's not very funny to me. Like, he's eccentric. He's over the top. He has gags, but I didn't find him particularly funny, and he's supposed to be funny. Tim Curry as Frankenfurter is more than just funny. He's commanding. He's intense. He's sexual. He's so many things. And he gets to be funny too, but like he's so many things. And Barry Bostwick as Brad is very funny, and he's so many. This film was like the depthful character I had was the judge, because he had an arc. He had something he needed to do.
He had a lot of good lines where it would just be something incredibly deep.
Yeah, and he's also, a callback to the previous movie because he was the narrator. The criminologist, and now he's a judge, and whether he's the same character or not, you decide. There's some little tidbits that indicate that he is, but then if he is, none of it makes sense. Yeah. So whatever, like, you can't fret about that, but whatever.
Yeah, I guess I did enjoy them as the basic caricatures they were, but again, like, I did want more out of them for a bit better story. Yeah.
I just couldn't latch on to anything other than the technicals of the movie were quite well done. The dancing was good. I like Jessica Harper as an actress, and I like her singing voice. It's kind of hard, though, because we don't get too many songs of her as just Janet. We get songs of her after she's been... a lot more songs after she's been, transformed, let's say, where Jessica Harper's sultry, deep voice works for those numbers, but we don't have like a counter as often. Like, I can't think of too many where it's just like her singing a song where she's domineering and leading it, when she's just plain old Janet, to show us how she's changed musically speaking.
Yeah, the only one I really have is the one where it's the duet with Brad at the beginning.
Exactly, and that's a cacophony of so many things happening as well. But yeah, and even then, she still has the Jessica Harper's deep, husky, sultry voice.
Especially at the very end of that song.
And so you don't have like the squeaky clean, I'm here and I love my Brad. It's at the same note for me. But I like her voice. I think she has a good voice. We talked about that in Phantom of the Paradise. So it's come back again. But I thought she did a good job when she was having to be, the Janet that's been corrupted, when she's going out there for people to admire her. I thought that Jessica Harper carried that really well. Her in the black dress. Like, that's an example. Going back to Spooky.
I thought about that too, yes.
You want to say it?
Sure. We did a film many years ago, and we've probably referenced it many times, called Vampire Academy. And there is a iconic to us scene in that film. To be clear, Vampire Academy, the film from like 2014 or something, not the Netflix show, where the main character and her friend are at the mall, and the main character's friend sees a dress off screen. It's like, oh my god, that is your dress. Main character looks with a bit of like yeah, impress me, and then realizes, oh, that is my dress. And it was just a very plain black dress.
Wasn't even a figure hugging or it was just she wore better dresses in the movie beforehand. Ones that you would go like, the classic, like, we're going to show the girls at the gala what you look like. And it was just like a plain black dress. Nothing.
I'm the least fashionable person in the world. And even I was like, oh, that's kind of normal.
And then we always bring that up. And this is a movie where it's like, see, they understood the black dress. When they have a whole song dedicated to the dress, you need the dress to fucking, land. And it lands in this movie. You remember the black dress that she wears and the hat and everything. Boy, do I have any positives? Any other positives I can pull out? It ended. That was nice.
Most films we do end, Ryan.
Most do.
Have we done one that hasn't ended?
Oh, boy. I feel like some of them trail off.
Some of them feel like they didn't end.
Yeah. Oh, boy. I can't pull much out. Like, this is one where I feel cruel saying this, but I don't understand why this has a loyal fan base. I just can't grab onto anything at all. And so even when you're like, I like the songs, I like this, I keep wanting to, I have to stop myself from just going, but why? Like, in a very surly tone, because I just didn't have that experience.
I guess they do have and I know that, this is going to be much softer than saying it for Rocky Horror Picture. There is a camp quality to it, and camp can be fun.
Yes, but there needs to be a point to it at times as well. Like, you could be over the top and camp and silly all you like, but, like, what's the thing you're getting at? Like, John Waters, for instance, he does a lot of camp stuff, over the top stuff, but he has, like, a point often. Like, there's something that they're getting at. And that's the thing. You can tell what they're getting at in this movie. You can see it. You can make the grand statement of what it is, but at the same time, it undervalues it because it just gets so distracted. And you can tell this is a movie where it was in production hell. Like, I had 50 million rewrites. It was changing this, changing that. Got to swap this out. Got to swap that out. And you can see it because there's no overall through line. Like, what is the message of the movie? Like, what's the big, here's the point of it?
It's some sort of variation about, I guess, being true to who you are and not falling into the materialistic temptations of pop culture or the media.
Yeah. You see, that's something. Like, I can't refute that point. But also it's like, there's like 50 other points that you can ring at. And I don't know, I feel like it's kind of a rocky ground. It's a shaky ground to be on, because it's like, well, if it has so many points, that means it's saying a lot, and that's good. It's like, yes, but it dilutes the central thesis of this. Oh, man. So, you remember this also because of a review you watched, and I remember you telling me that in this review they liked a particular song in particular, one that gets mentioned, which was the dress song, the Rip 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 song.
Did I mention that?
Yes, because I remembered watching this and you being like, well, the Cinema Snob video, I'm pretty sure he liked the dress song or something regarding that. Over the years, I can recall you bringing up the Rip 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 Tear Tear Tear, and I'm just like,
I don't remember that at all.
well, clearly that song didn't mean anything to you then when it
The
came
one that
up.
I remembered was the duet near the beginning, the Bitchin' in the Kitchen one.
Yes. Was that your favorite song?
Yeah, that was the one I liked.
Were there any other particular standout songs that you liked?
You brought up before the lullaby one kind of stinks. Oh no!
Leave it there, Freud.
I was actually going to say a very big complimentary thing about it. The tune of it kept reminding me of "No Woman, No Cry."
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and when the girl who was with Rick Mail, she sings in a very high pitched way.
Yeah, Lil Nell. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's the actress. Yeah.
And I could not stop thinking about like old Bollywood songs, like when you would have the very high.
Yeah, she's Columbia in Rocky Horror. She's
Yeah, I
in the
remember
Time
her.
Warp number. She's the one that does the tap dance.
Yeah, I remember her.
She has such a high pitched voice. You know it's her immediately. I didn't recognize her visually because I'm so used to her with short red hair and, in the Rocky gear and other things. So when she had like a long brown hair and she's like sexy in this and all of this, I was like, oh,
Yeah, it
I
was
don't
mainly
know.
the voice.
And then she talks
Yeah.
and sings. And I'm like, oh, that's her. That's Lil Nell, our Aussie sweetheart. Because she's Australian.
Oh, okay.
But she does her Harley Quinn type accent, where it's like really, really overtly New Yorker.
We need more of that these days.
Rick Mail barely sings, huh?
Hmm.
Oh, I was distracted by this. I don't know if you spotted this. During that song, the bedtimey, sleepy song, when they're focusing on them two, she's singing. And there's some pauses for music. You see his singing too, but there's no word. There's no lyrics. Go back to that scene. He's mouthing. He's clearly singing. Nothing's coming out.
He's like taking photos of her and like saying something.
But it's like he's it feels like he's supposed to be singing. It's just weird. Like it looks like he's singing, but they've went, that's not good. Take it out. Because it's paced weirdly. It's just. Rick Mail doesn't get to do anything in this movie. It's actually quite tragic. I love Rick Mail. This is an early gig for him, so they clearly didn't know what like pure talent he was, but
Well, Ryan, he's being a team player.
What was his name? He had a great name.
Ricky, I think.
Yeah, Ward something. He it's so tragic.
Knowing who he is,
Rick
you'd
Mail
expect a lot.
in an outrageous musical by the guy who did Rocky Horror Picture Show, and Rick Mail gets fucking nothing. Like, I get it. It was before he was huge, and they didn't really know his level of talent. But man, he can't point to this as an early Rick Mail role where you could see the things that you can't point to this one. You know how you can do that with some people, like, oh, before they really broke big, you can see this movie. Oh, look, it's right that you can see it in the pit. Not in Shock Treatment, which is actually kind of crazy that he's probably one of the more subdued performances in this movie. The fact that his character is just weird because he takes photos all the time, but relatively speaking, he seems pretty normal.
I think he did have some choreography, at least in some of the songs.
He kicked the camera.
I think he was dressed as a nurse.
Yeah, sure. I'll take your word for it. What's a song that you didn't like? Was there any in particular where you're like, geez?
You know what? The one that 12-year-old Ryan quit on didn't really do too much for me, I guess.
What did he know?
What did he know? Even though, ironically, they were bringing Brad back into the singing.
What about that Dad's musical number? Come on. You tell me if that was good.
I loved it as much as I loved Do It For Our Country from Grease 2.
So a lot. I was thinking about Grease 2 when watching this as well, actually. I was like, there's a movie that knew what it was doing. There's a movie that knew exactly what to do.
See, that's another thing that I was kind of thinking. Like, Grease 2 is something that growing up, I'd always heard was like, oh, it's a shit sequel to a big thing. And then, I ended up enjoying it when we did it on the podcast. I'm like, oh, maybe this will be a repeat of that.
I hoped that for Shock Treatment.
Yeah, you were saying, because we were hanging out yesterday, you were saying, like, I want to walk in with an open mind. And hearing at the beginning that, like, you didn't even finish it the first time through, it's like, okay, give it another chance. Well, it's going to be, like Freddy Got Fingered for you.
Yeah, that's right.
Or was that Reese?
Who knows anymore? It was Reese. He didn't tell us that he hadn't watched it all.
Yeah, he quit.
He was
at some
judging me for not wanting to watch it. But I'm trying to think what else there is to say about Shock Treatment. I could make comparisons and contrasts to Rocky Horror, but I think that's a futile endeavor because what it is currently, it's not supposed to be that. But also, it is fair to do that because it also at times does it. So it's kind of fucked no matter which way you look at it as a spiritual successor because it is so drastically different, but it doesn't seem like there's a good enough point to it. And the reuse of characters, but undoing or kind of not getting the point of it is damning. Like, Brad and Janet are played by different actors. They do their own interpretations, but the characterizations of Brad and Janet don't really work that well. Or, the Hapshats, they're here, now they're broken up and divorced and miserable, and it's like, okay, what's that going to lead to as a form of commentary? Not much. Not much. Okay. The criminologist, he's back because Charles Gray's available. Like, it doesn't really feel like, why. There's a narrator in the movie. It opens up the movie. It's kind of like we were watching Phantom of the Paradise, where it's like a story about like a rich asshole who's going to try and break up the success of blah, blah, blah. But except for that movie had Rod Serling doing the narration. So you really got hooked in on what it was about. This one is like a still image, an awkward still image of a guy in darkness smoking. And then the narration stops and then eventually the still image plays. It's very awkward. The way this movie introduces itself stumbles out of the gate immediately. It's like, all right, off. I guess we're going to the movie now.
I honestly don't remember that.
Yeah, go back and watch. There's a narrator at the beginning and end. And
it's not like the reporter who's throughout the film?
Nope. It's a male voice.
Oh, would have made sense to make it that.
It's a male voice doing like a very over-the-top old-fashioned American accent. Like he sounds like he's from the, old rural, like, I just found myself this. This is a story. It's like, this is a story about a rich man trying to break up a relationship so he could get the girl. Like, that's what it tells you.
That doesn't fit the film.
Well, technically it does.
It does?
Because he's trying to take everything Brad has.
Yeah, it fits, like, the point of the antagonist, but I mean, like, thematically with the film, like, that doesn't sound right.
No.
On paper, that sounds a bit more like Road Warrior.
Well, it reminded me of Phantom of Paradise, where that tells you at the beginning, like, this is a story about this, and then this, and this, and then you watch it, and then you go, yeah, it is. It does work for me, because throughout the whole film, you're like, well, what's the point? Like, if you don't have that narration at the beginning, what's, like, the agenda here? Like, what's the thrust of the plot's purposes, not just themes? So if you have that in the back of your brain, that this is a story about some elusive figure, the rich man running this whose face we don't see for a very long time, doing all of this to get Janet for himself, it motivates the scenes a lot more than if we were just discovering it along with Janet.
Yeah, the content of the speech I'm fine with, but yeah, just the...
You don't remember it.
I really don't.
There you go. That's the start of the movie. It just happened.
I remember the pan across like the studio and everyone's sitting down and the heart on the logo.
Yes. And you don't remember the end where the guy narrates us out. So there you go. Unless I watched a special edition, the narrator's cut.
The YouTube cut.
The narrator's cut. That's what we call it in my house. But yeah, my point is, like, there's really no reason to compare to Rocky Horror because all it does is make the film less. But how do you, I know, because you don't have like the long history with either of these films, how do you feel about how it does kind of have this weird, like, middle of the road, kind of gray, blurry line relationship of being a follow up and being its own thing. Because it's like we are following Brad and Janet. We have the Hap shots. We have this. There's like a million things you can point to, but also it's nothing like Rocky Horror. It's not really picking up anything. It's not really furthering any of those things. It's just kind of like, hey, the Richard O'Brien guy makes a little reference that they might be aliens. Well, because that's funny. Because they were aliens in the previous movie. So are they actually Magenta and Riff Raff in this movie? Pretend? Like, how do you feel about it, considering especially that you have a very,
The only characters from this that I would recognize as being from the last one was like, oh, Brad and Janet, because, they were the central characters. Like, the Hapshats, or whatever you called them, like, I don't remember who they are from the first film.
They're the wedding at the beginning of the movie. They're the reason Brad and Janet exist in the story.
Right. Okay. And other than that, like, I remember some of the actors, but I recognize that they're playing different characters. Like, I remember Riff Raff. He was like the bald guy.
Yes.
I do kind of see this almost standalone, or maybe in some sort of like wider universe where it's like, oh, the weird adventures of Brad and Janet. What are they going to run into this time? And it's like the same recurring actors kind of thing. Yeah, I don't know. I walk out of this film with like generally positive feelings, but wanting there to be more to have come out of it.
Yeah, it's as its own thing, it just is lacking, and as a follow up, it's also lacking because I respect on an artistic level that they go for a different setting, different story. Don't indulge in what the fans want, which is what my mum wanted, which is Frankenfurter back. That's what you all want. You all want Frankenfurter to be back. Like, the major pushback of this movie is there's no Frankenfurter, so fuck it.
Yeah,
Who cares?
I don't get the full meaning behind it, but I was reading some sort of, I don't know if it was a trivia point or if it was someone making a comment about how, like, the audience in the film was meant to be a sort of, like, analog to the fans of Rocky Horror.
Maybe.
I don't understand that one.
But, because we want the thing back. And even the actors don't get what this movie was about. I think that's very funny. Like, so many of them were like, I don't know, I just came in, I did my thing. Like, Patricia Quinn, who plays, like, the second fiddle to Richard O'Brien in this. She's the nurse or whatever, the doctor.
His sister, was it? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and she was Magenta. And even she's like, I didn't know what the movie was all about. I had no clue. And then Richard O'Brien told me about this thing called The Truman Show, and then I was like, oh, I guess that's what it was about. Okay, got it. It's like decades later. It's just this thing where you want the best character in the movie from the previous movie to be in this one, but there's no real reason to have it other than for the fans. So I respect that they didn't do that. But I can't,
You don't have to like the finished product just because you respect it.
I also think it would have been majorly improved if we had him. If we had Tim Curry, if we had Frankenfurter, it would have been sloppy fan service bullshit, but at the same time, baby, feed me something. Because Brad and Janet ain't doing it. Like, I love Brad and Janet. Brad's one of my favorite characters in Rocky Horror. Barry Bostwick's performance is hilarious and fantastic. It's so underrated. But Brad gets nothing in this. This was the original actors that they wanted for Brad for Rocky Horror, but he was busy. Yeah. And then Barry Bostwick was busy, so they got this guy. So that's fun. We got the best of both worlds in that way. But what do you feel about the villain? We didn't talk about him. Like, this whole idea of this villain. Like, did you notice straight away or partway through that it was the same actor playing the antagonist that was playing Brad?
I missed it, yeah, until it was brought up at the end. I did. He was also, in a weird way, an elusive figure because he's mostly seen in his like little office reacting to things, and he has a villain song where he's acting like a villain, but he's in this like very small TV, and always it builds upon that sort of like artifice as well.
Yeah. So those are things that happen. But what do you feel about this character? What he offers up? What his role suggests about society or about, because it becomes this. In the end, he wins, kind of. Or at least he wins that war. He becomes the king of the madhouse, all of that kind of stuff.
I'd say he declares that he didn't lose.
Mm-hmm.
Because he wanted Janet, but he didn't get her in the end.
Mm-hmm. Yes, but he got the rest of his plan. So he was all about sanity. That was his whole campaign. I don't know what to make. Like, other than, again, you reacted like, yes, he was an antagonist and he did this. But, like, as an antagonist, what's his contribution message-wise or thematically?
I don't know. Capitalism's bad.
Capitalism's bad.
Feels like kind of like what's his face? From we talked about it a little bit in Small Soldiers, where it was like the head of the company was a little bit of a confused character, where it was like, oh, I have this military goal, but also throughout the film I'm being portrayed as like, I'm only interested in the cool things, like the toys are cool, not lame.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know what he offers up. They have all of this backstory that they reveal about him and Brad and the presidents.
Yeah,
and
they're secret twin brothers.
But what does that give you?
I
don't know.
It's just a justification for the revelation we get at the end.
And that he wants Brad's life.
Like, I had the better life, but you have the result that I want.
I guess. And he's doing this Jack Nicholson performance. Like, the actor said he was channeling Jack Nicholson. Great. I feel like he should have channeled one of the actual media moguls, like your Ted Turners or, Rupert Murdoch's or something. Every time we cut to him, I was like, oh yeah, this guy exists. Because there was this, when you get in a movie where they hint at the big bad guy pulling the strings, but you're not seeing them yet, and you're like, ooh, I can't wait to, I really can't wait. I'm built up the anticipation of who this antagonist is going to be, and or who they're going to be played by. In a movie, you're like, oh, who will it be? Someone of note, oh, cool. And in this case, you get like, oh, it's a guy who plays Brad, and you don't really notice that because they barely show Brad, so you can't really have the contrast.
Yeah, exactly.
And then when you actually get to meet this guy, it's just like, oh, he's just a guy? I'll make this my final comparison, but we did Phantom of the Paradise. Paul Williams' character, Swan, is exactly the same function. But boy, do you have an opinion on that character, that performance, and what he does for the story, what he offers up as an antagonistic force. You can say more about that character that basically is the same as this one than capitalism bad. So much more. It's not even that the actor who plays this villain is lacking. It's just there's no real driving force to him other than he's a guy that's evil.
Yeah, in this film, the antagonistic force is more so the people on the floor doing the things, which is all the character actors, the Richard O'Brien and the Rick Mayall team.
Yeah, and even then, a lot of the evil comes from they're just over-the-top performances, rather than like, I couldn't tell you what Richard O'Brien's character was all about. I couldn't give you, and he can't either. He makes a big deal that he gives a terrible performance and that his character is really muddled and confused, and I agree. At the beginning, he's like affronted at the idea that this big corporate tycoon is going to interfere with his work, but a scene later, he's like, I'm all for the corporate tycoon. I don't know how he got there.
Yeah, he kind of looks like in a way, like a character of like a 1984 character. It's like, oh, I'm the one who's going to be pushing the agenda, and I'm going to be like one-dimensionally focused on that. But yeah, he does have all those little doubts and then weird character eccentricities that come out of nowhere, compared to what he's introduced as.
I'm being very down. And of course, I'm not going to recommend this. I think it's worthless. It's style over substance. That's my opinion, and that will also be the thing that it's praised for, because it's talking about the excess. It's talking about the corporatization, capitalistic agenda, and how we are so obsessed with the style rather than the substance. And when you have pieces like that, that can be it can be real tough to nail it without yourself becoming something without substance and just flashy and stylistic. I mean, there are people who love Baz Luhrmann movies and can get into them because they think there's more than just the gimmicky, flashy crap that he does. I'm not one of those. And that's how I kind of feel like about this. I'd love to see Baz Luhrmann's Shock Treatment. Just telling you now, that would be an amazing film. Not really, but you know what I'm saying. It's just a film in which I think they were obsessed with how it would look rather than what's inside. When I think about it, I'm looking at Richard O'Brien's outfit and his glasses and his bald head, and I'm like, oh, they really thought about how this character would look, but what about the character? It didn't get that far. Just mad scientist. Keep going. No. Didn't you see his little smock? Also, he's into fashion. For one scene.
Yeah, he likes that. He has a song about it, which I think you said earlier he has a full song, but it's a very short song.
The Rip 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 song feels like it goes for ages. Are you saying it's a short song?
Wasn't it only like a minute or two?
Aren't all of them? Isn't there like 50 songs in this movie? Isn't there like 60 songs? Isn't there like 100 songs in this movie?
Yeah.
Bit over a dozen, please. I feel, honestly, I don't know how long the track list was, but it felt like there was like, if I had to guess, it felt like there was 28 songs in this movie. It felt like so many songs.
I thought it was more like 16-ish.
Let's say 60. Call a day.
It rhymes with what I said. Why not?
It had 6 in it. But what are your final thoughts on this, and would you recommend?
I do think style over substance is the key point here, and if that's good enough for you, then you can check it out, but I think for a lot of people, that probably isn't enough. So even though I do have positive feelings for it, I'm probably not going to recommend it either. Would
you ever give this a viewing again?
I think I would, because like I said, the style kind of did work for me. But I don't think I'll really be pushing anyone to check it out.
Now, here's another question about the viewing of it. How do you think this would fare with a double feature of Rocky Horror?
Again, I don't remember the full experience of Rocky Horror that well, but, basing it off of what I do remember, what order would be the better order?
Well, you have to watch them in order. This is a sequel.
Yeah, that's true. I think people are going to enjoy the first half of that experience.
You are definitely like people will enjoy it. I was asking about you, but you are like, I don't know, man.
If it's me, I'll probably be fine. But yeah, I think for most people, yeah.
I would be curious. If
Let's do it.
Shock Treatment like stays the same for you or rises and falls for you after viewing Rocky Horror. Like, that's the thing. It's one of those where it's like, and again, like, I understand the film can stand on its own merits, but that's the thing. It wants it both ways a bit, and you can't get away with that. You can't keep getting away with that, Richard O'Brien. I was having this conversation. I don't know too much about Richard O'Brien as an artist. They're an actor. They were in Dungeons and Dragons, the film.
The one we watched?
Yes, they were the games master.
I'm sorry about snails.
Yeah, he didn't get to say I'm sorry about snails, but he was like the one that was running like the elaborate like death trap labyrinthian maze they had to run through, and he was like drinking from a chalice, and he didn't have any. He was just bold. He was just Richard O'Brien. He was over the top. He was the one that understood the movie was shit and gave a appropriately hammy performance, and Jeremy Irons was the other person who understood the movie was shit. But Richard O'Brien, I don't know other musicals he's done. I just know Rocky Horror and this, and I had this moment where I was like, I guess Richard O'Brien is just did Rocky Horror. That's it. Like, I know Richard O'Brien's done like acting work and there's been another stuff, but like as a creative, he talks about like how he still thinks the songs hold up and like they're better than Rocky Horror. He stands by that the songs are better.
I didn't read that part.
Oh, I watched an interview with him from like 10 years ago with Mark Commode, where he's like, I think they're better. I think the lyrics are better. I think the musical composing is better. I think the singing is better. And I'm like, Please, I'm getting a lot of damage from this, Richard. Please, but I just find it interesting. Like, one of the most heralded musicals, and the person who did it, I can't tell you any other musicals they've done.
I think I've looked up his Wikipedia earlier today, and musical-wise, I think it's only been like Rocky Horror related things.
Yeah. Because usually, like, some of these ones, like the guy who did Little Shop of Horrors, obviously went on to do many other things and did many things beforehand. And, same with, Andrew Lloyd Webber's done like a million things. And there's plenty of others we could point to. But I just find it interesting because, I'm kind of surprised that there's just not that much Richard O'Brien musical stuff that I can conjure up from my mind. I'm not looking it up. I'm just conjuring up from my mind. It's just Rocky Horror.
Basic looking at his discography on Wikipedia, like he's got singles and album, but then soundtrack and cast recordings, it's just, Rocky Horror show, London cast, Rocky Horror Picture Show film, and then Shock Treatment film.
Yeah. But
a couple of Christmas songs, it looks like, singles in the 70s.
I am recommending the last Spooky Month movie.
Ever?
It's the last one ever. We're never going to 10 years. I'm sorry.
Oh, shit.
So, we just watched this film, and by pure brilliance, we're getting an actor coming back.
Oh, it's like a little baton.
This is the year of Jessica Harper, baby.
Oh, is she in this one too?
She's in this one too.
Cool.
Now, I want to get it right. She's only in it in a minor role because the film that I'm recommending is Suspiria, the remake, the one from most recent times, directed by Luca Guadagnino, who has done a bunch of movies. Call Me by Your Name, I think he did.
Mm-hmm.
This is the modern interpretation of the 1970s Suspiria, and Jessica Harper was a lead in the original Suspiria, so she has a brief appearance in this movie. I've not seen the modern Suspiria. I have seen the original one earlier this year in the cinema, so I was like, I want to cover the new one. I want to watch it. And I was like, I'll leave it for the podcast. And I'll just say this. People out there, and Bartek, you can watch the original one if you like. I've seen it. I may bring it up, but it's totally up to you if you want to. They're different films. They follow the same very loose story structure, but they're different movies. That's all I'll say. Like, it's up to you if you want to watch both of them. I would suggest, for our purposes, watch the new one first and then give the old one a look over if you like. But they are different. But everyone, we're doing the new Suspiria starring Dakota Johnson. She's the lead.
Mm-hmm.
50 Shades of Grey herself.
Oh, yeah, right.
Daughter of Don Johnson, who is an actor of great renown in his own right. He was in Django Unchained. So there you go. He was Big Daddy in that movie. I can't remember. Did you see Django Unchained?
I saw it in the cinema. That's the only time I've seen
he's
it.
like one of the big slave masters that he has to deal with. It's like Big Daddy. But modern Suspiria, everyone make sure to give it a viewing for yourself. In the meantime, you can find us on social medias of Facebook and Twitter, Spit and Polish Presents. And if you want to email us and let us know your thoughts and opinions on things, as well as suggest movies, because we do take movie recommendations, isn't that right, Bartek?
That's true. At the end of the Suspiria episode, we'll hear one of those.
Well, where can people hit us up for those?
You can hit us up anywhere online that you can find us. That can be on our Facebook page, Spit and Polish Presents, our Twitter page, which is also Spit and Polish Presents. You can do a comment on our YouTube channel, also called Spit and Polish Presents. And if you want to send us a direct private email, you can do that at spitandpolished@gmail.com.
All of this included in that description for your convenience.
Mm-hmm.
Your convenience.
And you can even read in the description the actual year that this new Suspiria comes from.
That's correct. I want to say 2017, but I may be wrong on that. It feels right, but it's it's one of those, like, oh, it came out, in before the dark times. You know what I mean? Isn't that great? Like, we have, we had a plague, and we can call things before the dark times. So that is our podcast. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and we hope that you kept yourself nice and sedated. You didn't have any,
like Ryan's dad.
Yeah, my dad. Oh boy. Yeah, if you listen to people talk about shock treatment, it's hard to stay awake. It's it's a real sleepy genre movie that they should have called it Sleepy Treatment.
I kind of did the thing you told me to do last time.
Oh, which was to tell us about what spooky Polish lore there is?
Yeah, I looked up a little bit on the way here. I never forgot, but I looked up pretty late. A lot of it is shared between a lot of, other Slavic cultures.
Just like Schmingles Dingles.
Just like Schmingles... Well, I mean, Schmingles Dingles is also shared with non-Slavic cultures as well.
It's that universal.
Yeah, it's just that weird, like, Central European kind of thing. And there was... You mentioned just before something about Sleepy. There were a couple of different things that I was reading. Like, apparently there's, like, a Polish type of vampire... sucks on people's blood like a normal vampire, but apparently only on people they knew while they were not a vampire.
That's brutal.
Yeah, vampierz, which is just the Polish word for vampire. There was something in here. I've got the list. Something about sleep. Like
sleep paralysis demons.
Chernobog, that's one. Is this the one?
I like that you just say it like Chernobog, that's one. We all know that. We don't need to go through that. It's like a chocobo. I have a spooky story while you look up your facts.
Mm-hmm.
I saw today, no joke, news article today, that a Polish funeral home had to apologize.
Oh?
What do you think they had to apologize for? I'll narrow it down. It involves a hearse.
Involves a hearse? Someone wasn't really dead?
Good try. They apologized for the fact that a body fell out of a hearse on a moving while moving on a highway, and people ran over the body. They apologized for their grievous error, and I just laughed and laughed, like classic Polish people getting that messy, dropping bodies all over the highways of Poland. That's
fun. Give them a little bit more life before they're buried, I reckon.
Make them a bit flatter.
Yeah. I think it was this thing. So there was apparently a thing called a bebok, which is a boogeyman figure used to scare children into behaving. Usually he is thought to be small and child-sized, but hairy and ugly and very mischievous. So maybe it's like, gotta go to bed or else bebok will get you.
I would put bebok at least number 8 on my hot... ladies of spooky variety. They are the size of an average child.
You know what? Right below that on this list from a website called Travel and History, there's something here called a Shiga and Shigong, which I'm wondering, because it says here it's similar to vampires but super ramped up in intensity. I'm wondering if this is where thing we referenced earlier, Vampire Academy, if this is what Strigoi came from. Shiga Shigon. It's based on a Croatian myth, so not Polish, but yeah. Shiga. In terms of an actual Polish one, there's apparently like the myth of the founding of Warsaw, Warszawa, was that a fisherman ran into a siren or mermaid. So that's the Polish one, I guess.